Mental toughness is not about being fearless, loud, or endlessly motivated. It is about how you think when pressure shows up, when no one is watching, and when quitting would feel reasonable. Most people believe strength is visible. The truth is, real strength is internal, quiet, and disciplined. It is built in moments that look insignificant from the outside, but define everything on the inside. If you've ever felt frustrated watching others stay calm while you feel overwhelmed, you're not weak. You were just never taught how strong minds actually work. The world praises results, confidence, and success, but rarely explains the thinking that produces them. That thinking is not natural. It is trained. And the people you call the top 1% did not wake up different. They were shaped by how they responded to difficulty, boredom, pressure, and uncertainty. This audiobook is not here to motivate you for a day. Motivation fades, feelings change. What lasts is structure. What lasts is a way of thinking that holds steady when emotions try to pull you off course. Mental toughness is not about forcing yourself to feel good. It is about learning how to move forward even when you don't. At some point, everyone reaches a moment where talent is no longer enough. Effort alone stops working. That is where mindset becomes decisive. The strongest people are not those with perfect discipline or endless energy. They are the ones who have learned how to separate emotion from action, comfort from progress, and identity from mood. You may feel behind, you may feel like others have something you don't, but what you are missing is not ability. It is a blueprint, a way of interpreting stress, a way of responding to failure, a way of staying calm when everything feels urgent. Once that blueprint is installed, your behavior changes naturally because your thinking has changed first. Over the next hour, you will learn how the top 1% think under pressure. Not in theory, but in practice. You will see how they train their mind to stay steady, how they deal with boredom, how they handle isolation, and how they build resilience without drama or noise. These are not tricks. They are mental standards repeated daily until they become identity. This is not about becoming better than others. It is about becoming harder to break, harder to distract, harder to pull off your path. Mental toughness does not announce itself. It shows up as consistency, restraint, and clarity when it matters most. Remember this as you continue. You do not need to change everything at once. You only need to adjust how you think in moments of resistance. Each small decision, repeated without negotiation, compounds quietly. This is how ordinary days create uncommon strength and how discipline replaces doubt with calm certainty over time. It is slow, deliberate, and invisible until results finally speak for themselves. As you listen, don't rush. Let the ideas settle. Notice where your current thinking keeps you stuck. Then notice what changes when you adopt a stronger internal standard. This is not a test of willpower. It is an invitation to think differently. By the end of this audiobook, you won't just understand mental toughness. You will recognize it, and once you recognize it, you can begin to build it, quietly, deliberately, and on your own terms. Chapter 1. The top 1%. Separate emotion. From action, most people live as if their emotions are commands. When they feel tired, they stop. When they feel discouraged, they slow down. When they feel anxious, they avoid. Over time, this creates a quiet pattern. Emotions lead, actions follow, and life becomes reactive instead of deliberate. The top 1% operate differently. They feel emotions just as deeply, but they do not allow those emotions to decide what happens next. This distinction is subtle, but it changes everything. Mental toughness does not mean being numb or detached. It means understanding that emotions are signals, not instructions. They provide information, not authority. Fear may signal risk. Boredom may signal repetition. Stress may signal importance. But none of these signals automatically deserve obedience. Most people confuse emotion with truth. If they feel overwhelmed, they assume the task is too much. If they feel unmotivated, they assume progress can wait. If they feel uncertain, they assume they are unprepared. The top 1% pause at this point. They recognize the emotion without surrendering to it. They ask a different question. What does this moment require, regardless of how I feel? This ability is not natural. It is trained. From an early age, many people are taught to chase comfort and avoid discomfort. Over time, this wires the brain to associate relief with safety and effort with danger. Mental toughness begins when this wiring is questioned. Strong minds learn to tolerate emotional discomfort without immediately trying to escape it. Consider how most people respond to pressure. The moment pressure rises, they speed up mentally. Thoughts scatter. Decisions become impulsive. They either overreact or shut down. The top 1% slow down instead, not because pressure disappears, but because they have trained themselves to create space between feeling and acting. That space is power. In that space, emotion can be observed rather than obeyed. Anxiety becomes a sensation, not a steering wheel. Frustration becomes noise, not direction. This does not happen through positive thinking or self-talk. It happens through repetition, through choosing action even when emotion resists. The strongest performers understand a simple principle. Feelings are temporary, standards are permanent. If action depends on feeling ready, progress becomes inconsistent. If action depends on standards, progress becomes inevitable. And the top 1% act according to pre-decided rules, not momentary moods. They do not ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" They ask, "Is this what I decided matters?" This shift removes negotiation from daily life. When emotion is in charge, every task becomes a debate. When standards are in charge, action becomes automatic. This is why mental toughness often looks boring from the outside. There is no drama, no inner dialogue, no visible struggle, just execution. Separating emotion from action does not mean ignoring emotion. It means placing it in the correct position. Emotions belong in awareness, not leadership. They can be acknowledged, named, and allowed to exist without being allowed to interfere. The top 1% are deeply aware of how they feel. They simply refuse to let those feelings interrupt momentum. When discomfort shows up, they expect it. When resistance appears, they recognize it as part of the process. Nothing about this surprises them because they have already accounted for it. This is why their discipline appears calm rather than forced. They are not fighting themselves every day. They have already made peace with the fact that progress often feels uncomfortable. Once that acceptance is in place, emotion loses much of its leverage. Think about how many goals fail not because of difficulty, but because of emotional friction. The task becomes uncomfortable, boring, or uncertain, and action stops. Not because it cannot be done, but because it no longer feels good. The top 1% see this clearly. They understand that the moment emotion demands relief is often the moment growth is happening. Instead of asking how to feel better, they ask how to stay aligned. Alignment is the key word. When action is aligned with long-term identity rather than short-term emotion, consistency becomes possible. You stop trying to feel motivated and start acting in accordance with who you are becoming. This is where mental toughness begins to solidify. Each time action is taken without waiting for emotional permission, the mind learns a new lesson. I am not controlled by how I feel. Over time, this creates confidence that does not rely on mood. Calm replaces urgency. Clarity replaces inner noise. Importantly, this does not make life easier. It makes it simpler. Fewer internal arguments, fewer emotional detours, fewer days lost to hesitation. When emotion and action are separated, Energy stops leaking into unnecessary reactions. The top 1% conserve their emotional energy. They do not waste it on internal debates or self-justification. They move, then let emotion catch up later. This creates a sense of inner stability that others mistake for confidence or talent. In reality, it is trained restraint. You do not need to suppress emotion to do this. You only need to delay obedience. Let emotion speak, but do not let it vote. Let it pass through awareness while action continues forward. This chapter is not asking you to become cold or rigid. It is asking you to become deliberate, to recognize that feelings will rise and fall regardless of what you do, but progress only happens when action is consistent. Mental toughness begins the moment you stop asking emotion for permission. When you decide that action will be guided by standards, values, and long-term direction, not by comfort or mood. The top 1% are not emotionally stronger. They are emotionally unentangled. They feel everything, but they choose carefully. And that choice, repeated daily, is what makes them resilient when others stall. This is the foundation. Everything else builds on this separation. Without it, discipline collapses under pressure. With it, pressure becomes manageable. Not because it disappears, but because it no longer decides. Chapter 2. Mental toughness is built in boring moments. Most people believe mental toughness is forged in extreme situations. They imagine pressure, crisis, or dramatic challenges as the moments that define strength. In reality, those moments only reveal what was built long before. The foundation of mental toughness is not intensity. It is repetition. It is formed quietly, in ordinary days, during moments that feel dull, predictable, and uninspiring. This is where most people lose. When life becomes routine, their effort fades. When progress feels slow, they disengage. When nothing exciting happens, discipline collapses. The top 1% understand something critical. Boredom is not an obstacle to growth. It is the environment where growth happens. Boring moments expose who you really are. Not anyone can act with urgency when emotions are high. Anyone can push when adrenaline is present. But when there is no external pressure, no audience, and no immediate reward, behavior becomes honest. That is why the strongest minds do not wait for motivation. They rely on systems that function regardless of how the moment feels. Mental toughness is built when you show up without stimulation, when the task feels repetitive, when there is no. But mental toughness is the ability to stay engaged even when the brain is asking for relief. The difference is not willpower. It is an expectation. The top 1% expect the process to feel boring at times. They do not interpret monotony as a signal to stop. They see it as confirmation that they are doing real work. When progress is slow and uneventful, they understand they are in the right place. Most people confuse boredom with inefficiency. They assume that if something feels dull, it must not be working. The truth is the opposite. Repetition without excitement is often what creates lasting change. Skills compound quietly. Strength accumulates invisibly. Consistency does not announce itself. This is why mental toughness looks unimpressive during its construction phase. There is no rush, no surge, no emotional payoff. Just small actions repeated without negotiation. The top 1% are willing to live in this phase longer than others. They do not chase stimulation, they protect rhythm. When you rely on excitement, your performance becomes unstable. High days lead to effort, low days lead to avoidance. Over time, this creates inconsistency and frustration. The top 1% remove this volatility by standardizing behavior. The action happens whether the day feels good or not. This is how boredom becomes a training ground. Each time you complete a task without emotional engagement, you reinforce a powerful identity. Someone who does not need entertainment to execute. Someone who does not require constant reward to remain disciplined. That identity compounds. Boring moments also remove ego from the equation. There is no applause, no comparison, and no external validation. You're left alone with your standards. This is uncomfortable for most people, which is why they seek noise. The top 1% stay. They understand that distraction is often disguised as relief. When boredom shows up, most people scroll, talk, consume, or quit. Each escape weakens discipline. Each escape teaches the brain that discomfort leads to avoidance. Over time, this pattern erodes mental strength. The strongest minds reverse this association. They teach the brain that boredom is not dangerous, that staying present does not require excitement. This creates a calm resilience that holds under pressure later because the mind has already learned how to endure quiet discomfort. This is where long-term advantage is built. While others seek stimulation, the top 1% refine their ability to persist. Yet while others chase motivation, they deepen their tolerance for repetition. While others stop when it feels empty, they continue. Mental toughness is not loud, it is patient. Think of how many people start strong but fade quickly. The beginning is exciting. Progress feels fast. Then the plateau arrives. Improvement slows. Feedback disappears. This is where discipline either matures or collapses. The top 1% are prepared for this phase. They do not panic. They do not pivot. They stay. Staying is a skill. Every boring repetition strengthens trust in yourself. It proves that your commitment does not depend on feeling inspired. It creates internal reliability. You begin to know that you will act even when the moment offers nothing in return. This is deeply stabilizing. Over time, this changes how pressure is experienced. When challenges arise, they feel familiar rather than threatening. You have already trained in less stimulating conditions. Pressure becomes another environment, not an emergency. This chapter is not about forcing yourself to love routine. It is about respecting it, recognizing that boredom is not something to escape, but something to use. It is neutral. It only becomes negative when you expect entertainment from progress. The top 1% do not romanticize hard work. They normalize it. Should they remove emotion from the equation and let repetition do the work? Mental toughness is built quietly, when nothing seems to be happening, when effort feels ordinary, when results are delayed. Those who endure this phase emerge with a strength that does not fluctuate. This is why consistency beats intensity, and why boredom, properly understood, becomes one of your greatest training tools. Chapter 3. The top 1% don't argue with reality. One of the fastest ways people drain their mental energy is by arguing with what already exists. They replay events in their head, question fairness, and resist circumstances they cannot change. This internal resistance feels justified, but it quietly weakens mental toughness. The top 1% do not waste strength this way. They accept reality quickly, not because they like it, but because clarity is more useful than comfort. Most people believe acceptance means giving up. In truth, acceptance is the beginning of control. When you stop fighting reality, you free up the mental resources needed to respond intelligently. Mental toughness is not about liking the situation you are in. It is about working with it instead of against it. Arguing with reality usually sounds like this. This shouldn't have happened. It's unfair. If things were different, I'd be fine. These thoughts feel natural, but they lock the mind into a passive position. The moment you focus on how things should be, you lose focus on what can be done. The top 1% recognize this pattern immediately. When something goes wrong, they feel frustration, but they do not dwell in it. They move directly to a more productive question. Given this reality, what is my next move? That question changes everything. Reality does not respond to emotion. It does not negotiate. It does not adjust to preference. The strongest minds understand this early. They do not personalize setbacks or interpret obstacles as insults. They treat reality as neutral information. Conditions exist. Constraints exist. Their task is to adapt. This mindset removes unnecessary suffering. Pain may be unavoidable, but resistance is optional. When you argue with reality, you double the cost of difficulty. You experience the challenge itself, plus the mental exhaustion of resisting it. The top 1% eliminate the second cost. This is why they appear calm in situations that unsettle others. They are not calmer because life treats them better. They are calmer because they stopped expecting reality to cooperate. Once expectations are realistic, frustration loses its grip. Most people burn energy wishing circumstances were different. Strong minds invest energy in adjusting behavior. This is not optimism, it is practicality. Acceptance creates speed. The faster you accept what is, the faster you can act. Delay often comes from emotional resistance, and not from lack of options. When the mind stops protesting, movement begins. The top 1% train themselves to recognize when they are slipping into complaint. Complaining feels productive, but it rarely is. It creates the illusion of engagement without producing progress. Strong minds replace complaint with assessment. What changed? What remains under control? What needs to happen next? This approach builds resilience over time. Instead of being destabilized by setbacks, the mind becomes accustomed to recalibration. Plans change. Conditions shift. Nothing breaks. You adjust and continue. This is especially important under pressure. Pressure exposes how much emotional attachment you have to outcomes. When things do not go according to plan, emotional reactions intensify. The top 1% are prepared for this. They understand that plans are temporary, but principles are stable. They do not cling to a specific path. They stay committed to direction. This flexibility is often mistaken for detachment. In reality, it is strength. When you are not emotionally attached to how progress must look, you remain effective even when circumstances shift. You are not thrown off balance by deviation. Arguing with reality often stems from ego. The mind resists admitting that something did not work, that a mistake was made, or that control was limited. Mental toughness requires humility, not self-criticism, but accurate self-assessment. The top 1% are willing to say, "This didn't go as planned," without adding judgment. No self-pity, no drama, just information. That information becomes the basis for better decisions. This habit creates a sense of internal stability. When reality changes, identity does not collapse. You are not defined by outcomes, only by response. This allows you to stay grounded even in uncertainty. Over time, this approach reshapes how challenges are perceived. Problems stop feeling personal. They become logistical, something to be solved rather than something to be endured. This reduces emotional load and preserves focus. It also builds trust in yourself. Each time you face reality without resistance, you prove that you can handle things as they are, not as you wish they were. This quiet confidence compounds. Many people wait for ideal conditions to act. The top 1% act within imperfect conditions. They understand that waiting for comfort is another form of avoidance. Progress happens in constraint, not in ease. This chapter is not encouraging passivity. It is encouraging precision. Accepting reality does not mean accepting defeat. It means accepting the starting point. From there, everything becomes clearer. Once you stop arguing with what exists, your energy returns. Decisions sharpen. Emotional noise fades. Action becomes simpler. Mental toughness is not built by forcing reality to bend. It is built by learning how to move effectively within it. The sooner you stop resisting the facts of your situation, the sooner you regain momentum. The top 1% do not ask for life to be easier. They adjust themselves to meet what is in front of them, and because of that, very little is able to break their focus or slow their progress. This is the quiet power of acceptance. Not surrender, but alignment. When you align with reality, you stop wasting strength and start using it. Chapter 4. They train their mind to stay calm. Under pressure. Pressure is where most people lose access to their best thinking. As stress increases, the mind accelerates. Thoughts overlap. Urgency replaces clarity. Decisions become reactive rather than intentional. This is not a character flaw. It is a biological response. But the top 1% do not leave this response untrained. They understand that calm is not a personality trait. It is a skill. Most people assume that calmness is something you either have or you don't. They believe some people are naturally composed, while others are simply anxious under pressure. The truth is simpler and more uncomfortable. Calm must be practiced, and without practice, pressure will always take control. When pressure hits, the nervous system activates automatically. Heart rate rises. The breathing becomes shallow. Attention narrows. This response is useful for survival, but dangerous for decision-making. Under pressure, the mind wants speed, not accuracy. The top 1% recognize this and deliberately slow themselves down. They do not try to eliminate pressure. They train inside it. The key difference is awareness. When pressure appears, most people are pulled into it unconsciously. Their behavior changes before they realize what is happening. The top 1% notice the shift immediately. They feel the tension, the urgency, the tightening in the body. And instead of reacting, they regulate. This regulation begins with tempo. Calm is not the absence of stress. It is control over pace. When you slow your breathing, you slow your thinking. When you slow your thinking, you regain access to judgment. So the strongest minds train this response until it becomes automatic. They understand that pressure compresses time psychologically. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels immediate. Calm expands time. It creates the sense that there is room to choose rather than react. This is why calm people often appear confident under stress. Not because they know more, but because they can still think. Most people equate pressure with danger. The top 1% equate pressure with importance. This reframe changes the internal response. Instead of panic, there is focus. Instead of rush, there is precision. Calm under pressure is built long before high-stakes moments arrive. It is trained in small, controlled exposures. When something feels uncomfortable, they practice staying present. When something feels urgent, they practice slowing down. And these repetitions condition the nervous system to remain steady. Without this training, pressure hijacks behavior. With it, pressure sharpens performance. This is why emotional control is not about suppression. It is about regulation. The top 1% do not deny stress. They manage it. They allow the body to feel activation without letting the mind lose control. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to calm down by thinking their way out of stress. Under pressure, thinking becomes unreliable. The body must be addressed first. Breathing, posture, and stillness are the levers that bring the system back into balance. Strong minds know this intuitively. They breathe deliberately. They pause before speaking. They reduce unnecessary movement. And these small behaviors send a signal to the nervous system. There is no immediate threat. Once that signal is received, clarity returns. Calm creates authority. People trust those who remain composed. More importantly, calm allows you to trust yourself. When pressure no longer destabilizes you, decisions become cleaner. You stop overcorrecting. You stop chasing certainty. You act based on judgment rather than fear. The top 1% also understand that pressure exposes preparation. When the mind is calm, preparation becomes usable. When the mind is frantic, preparation disappears. Calm is what allows training, experience, and knowledge to surface when they are needed most. This is why panic is so costly. It does not just feel bad, it blocks access to competence. Over time, training calm under pressure creates a feedback loop. And each time you stay composed, confidence grows. Not confidence in outcome, but confidence in response. You begin to know that even if things go wrong, you will remain functional. This internal trust is a core component of mental toughness. It reduces fear of future challenges because you are no longer afraid of losing control. Most people seek certainty to feel calm. The top 1% reverse this. They cultivate calm so they can operate without certainty. This is a critical distinction. Certainty is fragile. Calm is durable. Pressure will always exist. Expectations, deadlines, responsibility, and risk are unavoidable. Mental toughness is not about escaping these forces. It is about developing the capacity to stay clear-headed within them. Calm does not mean slow action. It means deliberate action. It means choosing speed when speed is useful and restraint when restraint is required. Without calm, everything feels like an emergency. With calm, priorities become visible. This chapter is not about becoming passive or detached. It is about becoming effective when it matters. The ability to remain calm under pressure separates those who react from those who lead themselves. The top 1% train this ability daily, often without realizing it. They pause when others rush. They breathe when others tense. They think when others panic. Over time, this becomes their default state. Mental toughness is built in these moments, not by eliminating stress, but by mastering your response to it. When you can stay calm while others lose control, pressure stops being a threat and starts becoming an advantage. That advantage compounds quietly. Chapter 5. Mental toughness means delaying gratification relentlessly. One of the clearest dividing lines between average performance and exceptional strength is the ability to delay gratification. Most people understand this concept intellectually, but few live it consistently. They want progress, but they also want comfort. They want results, but they want them quickly. When those desires collide, comfort usually wins. The top 1% are different. They choose long-term power over short-term relief, again and again. Delayed gratification is not about deprivation, it is about priority. It is the decision to value future freedom more than present ease. This decision is rarely dramatic. It shows up quietly in daily choices that seem small but compound relentlessly over time. Most people live inside a short feedback loop. They act when they see immediate reward. When reward is delayed, effort drops. This makes sense from a biological perspective. The brain is wired to seek pleasure and avoid discomfort, but mental toughness requires overriding this wiring. The top 1% do not wait for reward to act. They act because the action itself aligns with who they are becoming. They understand that the most meaningful rewards are often invisible in the beginning. Strength, discipline, clarity, and self-trust do not announce themselves early. They arrive later, after many uncelebrated decisions. This is where most people quit. Not because the task is too hard, but because the payoff feels too far away. Delaying gratification requires faith in process, not blind faith. Safe but earned confidence that consistent effort produces results even when those results are not immediately visible. The top 1% have internalized this truth through experience. They have seen what happens when they stay patient while others rush. Short-term comfort is seductive. It promises relief now, but it almost always demands a price later. The strongest minds understand this trade-off clearly. They are willing to endure temporary discomfort to avoid long-term regret. This does not mean they enjoy suffering. It means they tolerate it. Every time you choose effort over ease, you strengthen your ability to choose again. Every time you resist the urge for immediate reward, you expand your capacity for discipline. Over time, this creates a kind of internal authority, till you begin to trust yourself to act in your own long-term interest, even when it feels uncomfortable. Most people cannot sit with discomfort. They rush to relieve it through distraction, indulgence, or avoidance. The top 1% allow discomfort to exist without immediately reacting. This is a critical skill. Discomfort is not dangerous. It is information. It often signals growth. Delayed gratification also changes how time is perceived. When you are oriented toward immediate reward, time feels slow and effort feels heavy. When you are oriented toward long-term outcomes, time becomes an ally. Each day of effort feels like an investment rather than a burden. The top 1% think in longer horizons. They do not ask, "How do I feel right now?" They ask, "What will this choice cost or create over the next year?" This question naturally filters decisions. Many temptations lose their appeal when viewed through a longer lens. This is why their discipline appears quiet and controlled. They are not constantly fighting impulses. They have trained themselves to see through them. The immediate reward loses power when it is recognized as a distraction from something more valuable. Delaying gratification also builds emotional stability. When your sense of satisfaction is not tied to immediate outcomes, your mood becomes less volatile. You stop riding emotional highs and lows. Progress becomes steadier. Confidence becomes grounded. Most people seek happiness through comfort. The top 1% seek fulfillment through alignment. They understand that comfort fades quickly, but pride in earned progress lasts. This pride is not arrogance, it is self-respect. This chapter is not asking you to eliminate pleasure from your life. It is asking you to put it in the right place. Pleasure enjoyed after effort feels different than pleasure used to escape effort. One strengthens you, the other weakens you. The strongest minds build structure around their days to reduce temptation. They do not rely on willpower alone. They design environments that make discipline easier and indulgence less automatic. This is not rigidity. It is intelligence. They also accept that progress often feels unrewarding in the moment. They do not expect daily excitement. They expect steady movement. This expectation removes disappointment. When nothing dramatic happens, they do not interpret it as failure. They interpret it as normal. Delayed gratification teaches patience, but more importantly, it teaches self-control. You learn that you are capable of waiting, that you do not need immediate relief to survive. This realization is empowering. It reduces impulsivity and increases intentionality. Over time, this skill reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to feel good to function. You become someone who can function regardless of feeling. This is a profound shift. It creates independence from circumstance. The top 1% are not immune to temptation. They simply value something else more. They have clarity about what they are building, and that clarity outweighs momentary desire. Mental toughness grows when you consistently choose the harder option that serves your future self. Not once, not occasionally, but as a pattern. As this chapter is about embracing that pattern, about recognizing that the discomfort of discipline is temporary, but the cost of avoidance is cumulative. Every time you delay gratification, you are not just making a choice. You are casting a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. And over time, those votes create a life that no longer depends on comfort to move forward. Chapter 6. The top 1%. Take full ownership, no exceptions. There is a moment in every person's life where progress stops being limited by ability and starts being limited by responsibility. Most people never recognize this moment. They stay trapped in explanations, circumstances, and conditions that feel reasonable but quietly strip them of power. The top 1% cross a different line. They take full ownership of their life, their outcomes, and their response to everything that happens, without exceptions. Ownership is not about blame. It is about control. The moment you assign responsibility elsewhere, you also assign power elsewhere. You may feel justified, but you become dependent. Strong minds refuse this trade. They understand that even when something is unfair, unexpected, or outside their influence, since their response is always theirs to own. Most people protect themselves emotionally by avoiding responsibility. They explain why something failed. They point to timing, other people, bad luck, or external limits. These explanations may be accurate, but they are rarely useful. Every excuse, no matter how reasonable, delays action. The top 1% see excuses for what they are. Mental pauses that feel safe but slow everything down. Ownership removes those pauses. When something goes wrong, strong minds do not ask who caused it. They ask what now requires action. This single shift collapses hesitation. There is no waiting for clarity, fairness, or permission. There is only response. That response creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. Taking ownership is uncomfortable because it removes all hiding places. There is no one else to blame for inaction, no one else to wait on, no external condition to fix first. This discomfort is exactly why ownership is rare. Most people would rather be right than effective. The top 1% choose effectiveness. Ownership also eliminates emotional noise. When blame disappears, resentment fades. When resentment fades, focus returns. The mind becomes quieter and more decisive. This clarity is often mistaken for confidence, but it is actually responsibility in action. Strong minds understand that responsibility equals leverage. If something is yours to own, it is yours to change. Even in situations you did not create, there is always a portion you control. Your behavior, your preparation, your next move. That portion is where power lives. Most people underestimate how draining it is to feel powerless. Blaming external factors may feel relieving, but it creates helplessness over time. Ownership does the opposite. It restores agency. Even small acts of responsibility reinforce the belief that you can influence outcomes. This belief compounds. The top 1% do not wait to feel confident before taking responsibility. Confidence grows from responsibility taken, not avoided. Each time you face a situation directly, without excuses, your internal strength increases. You learn that you can handle discomfort without collapsing. Ownership also accelerates learning. When mistakes happen, strong minds do not defend their ego. They analyze. What failed? Why? What changes next time? This approach removes shame and replaces it with data. Progress becomes faster because energy is not wasted on self-protection. Most people confuse ownership with self-criticism. The two are not the same. Ownership is neutral. It does not attack identity. It focuses on behavior. You can take full responsibility without punishing yourself. In fact, punishment often blocks improvement. Assessment creates it. The top 1% separate responsibility from emotion. They do not spiral into guilt or frustration. They stay task-oriented. What needs to be done now? What can be adjusted? This practical mindset keeps them moving forward when others freeze. Ownership also strengthens discipline. When you accept that no one is coming to save you, priorities sharpen. Excuses lose their appeal. Action becomes non-negotiable. This does not make life harsher. It makes it simpler. There is less waiting and more doing. Many people believe they need motivation to act. Strong minds understand that responsibility comes first. Motivation follows action, not the other way around. Ownership initiates movement even when motivation is absent. The top 1% also recognize that ownership creates emotional independence. When you stop blaming others, you stop handing them control over your emotional state. Frustration no longer lingers. Disappointment does not derail you. You regain internal stability. This stability is critical under pressure. When stakes are high, blaming creates chaos. Ownership creates clarity. Even if the situation is unfavorable, strong minds remain composed because they are focused on response, not reaction. Over time, full ownership reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone things happen to. You become someone who responds. This shift changes how challenges are perceived. Problems stop feeling personal. They become logistical, something to address rather than endure. Ownership also removes entitlement. Entitlement expects results without effort. When expectations are unmet, frustration grows. Ownership expects effort regardless of outcome. This removes bitterness and increases resilience. The strongest minds understand a hard truth. Even when you are not responsible for the problem, you are still responsible for the solution. This is not fair, but it is empowering. Fairness does not create progress. Responsibility does. This chapter is not about carrying unnecessary weight. It is about carrying the right weight. When you accept full ownership of your actions and decisions, you stop feeling at the mercy of circumstances. You stand upright in your own life. The top 1% do not outsource responsibility for their growth. They do not wait for ideal conditions, support, or validation. They act because they have decided to be the kind of person who acts. Mental toughness deepens the moment you stop explaining and start responding. When ownership becomes your default, momentum becomes inevitable. And once momentum takes hold, very little can stop you from moving forward. Chapter 7. They are comfortable. Being alone and misunderstood. One of the quiet strengths of the top 1% is their comfort with standing alone. Not physically isolated, but mentally independent. While most people seek agreement, reassurance, and validation, the strongest minds learn how to function without them. They understand that clarity often requires distance and that progress rarely looks popular in the beginning. Most people are deeply influenced by the opinions around them. Approval feels safe. Disapproval feels threatening. This creates a constant pull toward conformity. Choices are softened to avoid judgment. Ambitions are reduced to fit expectations. Over time, this erodes personal direction. The top 1% notice this pressure early and make a different decision. They stop outsourcing their sense of right and wrong. Being misunderstood is uncomfortable. It creates uncertainty and social friction. But mental toughness grows when you learn to tolerate that discomfort without retreating. The strongest minds do not need to be constantly explained or agreed with. They are grounded in their own standards. This does not mean they are arrogant or dismissive. It means they are internally anchored. They listen, consider, and decide independently. When their path diverges from the crowd, they do not panic. They accept that alignment with others is temporary, but alignment with purpose must be stable. Most people fear being alone because silence removes distraction. Without constant feedback, the mind is left with itself. Doubts surface. Insecurities speak louder. This is why many seek noise, conversation, and validation. The top 1% stay in the quiet. They learn to listen inward without immediately reacting. Solitude sharpens perception. When external voices fade, internal signals become clearer. Priorities emerge. Values solidify. The strongest minds use this clarity to refine their direction, even when it means moving against prevailing opinions. Being misunderstood is often a sign that you are ahead of consensus. New ideas, disciplined habits, and unconventional choices rarely make sense to others at first. The top 1% accept this as part of the process. They do not waste energy convincing everyone. They let results speak later. This restraint is powerful. Explaining yourself excessively often comes from insecurity. Silence, when paired with consistent action, communicates confidence. Over time, those who doubted begin to observe rather than question. Comfort with being alone also reduces emotional dependence. When you no longer need constant approval, your decisions become cleaner. You stop compromising long-term goals to maintain short-term comfort. This independence is essential for mental toughness. Many people confuse loneliness with weakness. In reality, loneliness often appears when you are transitioning away from old patterns. Growth separates you from what is familiar. The top 1% do not rush to fill that gap. They allow it to exist while new alignment forms. This phase can feel isolating, but it is temporary. What matters is how you interpret it. Most people see isolation as a problem. The strongest minds see it as refinement. Being comfortable alone also strengthens discipline. Without external pressure, your motivation must come from within. You learn to act because you decided to, not because someone is watching. This builds integrity. Your actions become consistent regardless of audience. The top 1% also understand that being misunderstood protects focus. When fewer people understand your process, fewer opinions interfere. This creates space for deep work and sustained effort. Progress accelerates in quiet environments. They are selective about influence. Not everyone deserves access to your thinking. Not every opinion deserves attention. Mental toughness includes the ability to filter input without becoming closed-minded. You remain open, but not porous. This balance is rare. Many people swing between isolation and dependence. The strongest minds stand in the middle. They connect when it serves growth and withdraw when it preserves clarity. Being misunderstood also teaches patience. You stop expecting immediate recognition. You learn to operate without praise. This removes entitlement and strengthens internal motivation. Progress becomes its own reward. Over time, this comfort with independence reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself through the lens of others' expectations. You become less reactive and more deliberate. Choices are made based on alignment, not approval. This does not make relationships impossible. It makes them healthier. When you no longer need validation, connection becomes optional rather than necessary. You choose relationships instead of clinging to them. The top 1% are often described as confident, but their confidence is quiet. It does not demand attention. It does not seek agreement. It rests in consistency. They know who they are becoming, even when others do not yet see it. This chapter is not encouraging withdrawal from the world. It is encouraging independence within it. To be present without being pulled. To listen without being controlled. To stand firm without becoming rigid. Mental toughness deepens when you realize that being alone at times is not a failure. It is a requirement for clarity. Being misunderstood is not a threat. It is a signal that you are thinking independently. Those who can tolerate this phase gain something rare: freedom from the need to be seen. And with that freedom comes focus, discipline, and strength that does not depend on anyone else's approval. Chapter 8. Mental toughness is an identity, not a mood. Most people treat discipline as something they try to access. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, the right mindset. On good days, they act. On bad days, they stall. This creates inconsistency that feels frustrating and confusing. The top 1% solve this problem at a deeper level. They do not rely on mood, they operate from identity. Mood is unstable. It changes with sleep, stress, weather, feedback, and circumstance. If your behavior depends on mood, your progress will always fluctuate. Mental toughness begins when action stops negotiating with feeling. This shift happens when discipline becomes part of who you are, not something you occasionally attempt. Identity answers a different question, says not, "How do I feel right now?" but "Who do I decide to be?" That decision changes everything. When action is tied to identity, behavior becomes consistent even when emotions are not. The top 1% do not say, "I'm trying to be disciplined." They say, "I am disciplined." This is not positive thinking. It is a commitment to a standard. Once identity is set, behavior follows naturally. There is no debate, because the decision has already been made. Most people underestimate how powerful identity is. The brain works hard to stay consistent with self-image. If you see yourself as someone who quits when it gets uncomfortable, your actions will align with that belief. If you see yourself as someone who finishes what they start, your behavior will adjust to match. That mental toughness solidifies when you choose an identity that does not depend on conditions. You stop asking whether you feel motivated enough. You act because acting is what someone like you does. This does not happen overnight. Identity is built through repeated evidence. Each time you act in alignment with a chosen standard, the identity strengthens. Each time you break it, the identity weakens. The top 1% are aware of this feedback loop and use it intentionally. They protect their identity carefully. This is why they care deeply about small promises. Not because the task itself is important, but because breaking promises to yourself erodes identity. Keeping them reinforces it. Over time, this creates self-trust. You begin to believe your own commitments. Most people rely on external accountability. Deadlines, pressure, expectations. These can help temporarily, but they do not build internal strength. Identity-based discipline does not require supervision. It operates in silence. This is why the strongest minds can function without praise or punishment. They are accountable to who they decided to be. That internal standard does not disappear when no one is watching. When discipline is identity-based, resistance loses power. Resistance still shows up, but it no longer determines action. Feeling tired does not change who you are. Feeling discouraged does not rewrite your standards. Action continues because identity remains intact. This creates a deep sense of stability. Life becomes less chaotic internally. You stop riding emotional waves. You act from principle rather than impulse. This is one of the most underrated benefits of mental toughness. Identity also simplifies decision-making. When faced with a choice, you do not analyze endlessly. You ask a simple question: what would someone like me do here? That question cuts through noise. It aligns action with long-term direction. The top 1% also understand that identity must be protected from erosion. They are careful with language. The words you use reinforce self-image. Saying, "I'm lazy," or "I have no discipline," may feel honest, but it strengthens an identity you may not want. Strong minds speak carefully, not to impress others, but to maintain internal alignment. This is not about pretending. It is about choosing consciously. Identity-based mental toughness also changes how setbacks are handled. Failure does not become proof of inadequacy. It becomes a momentary deviation. The identity remains intact, which allows faster recovery. You correct course instead of collapsing. Most people interpret mistakes as personal flaws. The top 1% interpret them as data. Their identity is not fragile because it is built on commitment, not perfection. This chapter brings everything together. Emotion no longer controls action. Boredom no longer disrupts consistency. Reality no longer creates resistance. Pressure no longer causes panic. Delayed gratification becomes natural. Ownership becomes default. Solitude becomes manageable. All of this is possible because identity anchors behavior. Mental toughness is not something you turn on. It is something you live as. When you operate from identity, motivation becomes unnecessary. You do not need to feel inspired to act. You act because this is how you operate. This is who you are. The top 1% are not constantly pushing themselves. They are expressing themselves. Their discipline is not forced. It is aligned. Over time, this alignment creates momentum that feels effortless from the outside. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means it becomes coherent. Your actions match your values. Your habits match your goals. Your behavior matches your identity. That coherence reduces internal conflict and frees energy. Mental toughness reaches maturity at this point, when effort no longer feels like resistance, but like expression. When discipline no longer feels heavy, but natural. When consistency no longer requires struggle, but flows from decision. This is the final shift, from doing to being. Once you decide who you are and you protect that decision daily, mental toughness stops being something you chase. It becomes something you embody, and from that place, very little can pull you off course. Mental toughness is not a dramatic transformation. It is not a single breakthrough moment or a sudden surge of motivation. It is the quiet result of many small decisions made consistently, often when no one is watching and nothing feels rewarding. What you have explored in this audiobook is not a set of tricks, but a way of operating in the world that compounds strength over time. You have seen that the top 1% do not rely on emotion to guide action. They separate how they feel from what they do. They understand that feelings change, but standards must remain stable. This alone removes a massive amount of internal chaos and creates consistency where others struggle. You learned that mental toughness is built in boring moments, not intense ones. In repetition, in routine, in the days that feel ordinary and unimpressive. And while most people wait for motivation or excitement, the strongest minds show up anyway. That willingness to stay when others drift away is where real advantage is formed. You saw how accepting reality, instead of arguing with it, preserves energy and restores control. Resistance creates suffering. Acceptance creates movement. When you stop wishing things were different and start working with what is, progress becomes possible again. You explored calm under pressure, not as a personality trait, but as a trained response. Calm is what allows clear thinking when stakes are high. It is what keeps preparation accessible when others panic. This calm is not passive. It is deliberate and powerful. You learned that delaying gratification is not about denying yourself pleasure, but about choosing long-term freedom over short-term comfort. Each time you resist immediate relief, you strengthen your ability to stay aligned with your future self. This skill alone separates those who build lasting strength from those who repeatedly start over. You confronted the reality of ownership. That responsibility is not a burden, but leverage. When you stop blaming and start responding, momentum returns. You become harder to stop because you no longer wait for conditions to be perfect. You recognize the importance of being comfortable alone and misunderstood. Growth often requires separation from familiar approval. The ability to stand by your standards without constant validation creates independence, clarity, and focus. And finally, you understood that mental toughness is an identity, not a mood. When discipline becomes part of who you are, not something you try to access, consistency becomes natural. Action no longer depends on motivation. It flows from decision. None of this requires perfection. Mental toughness is not about never failing or never feeling weak. It is about returning to your standards faster each time you drift. It is about responding instead of reacting, adjusting instead of quitting. From this point forward, the work is simple but not easy. Choose one principle and apply it today, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Today, small, repeated actions are enough. You do not need to overhaul your life. You only need to act differently in moments of resistance. Remember, strength does not announce itself early. It builds quietly. If you stay consistent, the results will eventually speak for you. If this audiobook resonated with you, share it with someone you know who needs it right now. Someone who feels stuck, overwhelmed, or unsure of themselves. Sometimes, the right idea at the right moment can change how a person sees their own potential. Thank you for spending this time investing in your mind. Stay disciplined, stay calm, stay aligned, and continue building the kind of mental toughness that cannot be taken from you. We'll meet again in the next audiobook.